Good afternoon. Often on Thursdays I talk to some well-known personalities like actors, writers, politicians, but today it's going to be a bit different. For one thing, we went out of the studio to film, and for another, the person we are talking to isn't well known at all, except perhaps to her close neighbours, her milkman and her home help. She may not be famous, but she is a personality. Violet Turner is 83. She was a nanny caring for the children of the aristocracy in the days before many of us were born. Though long since retired, she still keeps her hand in with the occasional baby minding. Her upbringing in Aldershot, the garrison town, was strict and Victorian. Nevertheless, she has memories, fond, candid, and occasionally scandalous of life at the turn of the century. I asked her if she could live her life all over again, what would she like to have been?
Well, the only thing that I would have liked to have been a school teacher, and I don't know why my mother wouldn't let me, but she wouldn't let me. Then I said I'd like to be a hospital nurse. My dear child, you've got bad legs, and I've not got bad legs. I didn't then, I have now, but she didn't think I ought to. But the fact is, my mother didn't want to leave me to leave, but of course, she would not keep girls in Aldershot, not when they get older. She explained everything, why we shouldn't, and what a lot of these girls were. Well, you know yourself what they were. She explained all that to us when we were quite young.
Do you think your own mother was warm to you and kind and loved you?
We were never allowed to go out to play as children do now, but I don't think we're any the worse for it. She was strict, she told us everything. So you had to be strict in Aldershot. It wasn't the Tommies and the sergeants, you see, that put girls on. It was the officers.
Really? They were the trouble, were they?
Oh, they were the trouble, you see. Good-looking girl, they encouraged her up the temple. Of course, now, it's a different breed, officers. You see, they was only, as you would say, gentlemen with interest money. They dressed these girls up and drove them about in their phaetons and that sort of thing. Well, they paid them well, and as they would have said, but we knew all that. And there was lots of roads in Aldershot. To this day, I've never been down because my mother made me promise I would never go down those roads. Well, I never did. We were brought up, you see, to be honourable to our parents.
Have you got anything that you remember your own father by? What about that?
Oh, that. That was made by a man in Romsey that was eventually hung.
How did your father get it?
Well, he had helped this man, and he made that for him. Well, one day he was standing at his garden gate, and a man came running by. He asked him the way to Portsmouth. Well, my grandfather advised him and gave him a cup of tea and helped him generally on his way. Well, 3 or 4 days afterwards, the peeler came, asked if he'd seen him. They wanted him for he'd done a violent murder in London, and he was eventually hung. That's my memento of it. Good, it's rather gruesome, but it's very pleasant to think, you see, I got that. And of course, at 53, it's not young.
No.
What on earth afterwards I suppose it'll have to go in the dustbin. I've nobody coming on that wants it.
What was your earliest recollection of Queen Victoria? I mean, did you see her very often?
Well, a little fat body.
Yes.
She was fat, and of course she was always going like that. And so did I when I sat in her carriage.
Why?
Because my father being a saddler, at one of the reviews he wanted to speak to the coachman. So he went across, and of course I was quizzy looking all round the carriage. And I said, is it really true Queen Victoria's on a spring? And he lifted me up and sat me on the seat. Well, I obeyed to the company.
Do you mean she nodded her head because
Yes,
she was
nodded her. You see, she was so short. She wasn't as tall as you.
Really? At what age did you first start to work, Miss Turner?
17.
17, and what did you do then?
Under nurse. Under a nanny. Under a nanny.
What did you do? Tell me about your job.
Well, we washed the napkins, and we washed, because, we had to have our midday meal with the children, or child as it was then. We wasn't allowed to go down. You see, your other nannies, she went with the staff to meals, but I never did. we had, the only one we was allowed to have dinner at night with was the butler and housekeeper. We were kept very secluded, and we had to walk. We wasn't allowed to, well, I did occasionally, speak with other nannies. We was always alone.
For how long were you an under nurse?
Oh, about 12 months. Then you see I could take on.
Then you became a full nanny.
Yes, you've had a full nanny. But of course you really were trained through everything. And also you were trained to take responsibility. Now, I think sometimes these girls, if they're faced with a sudden responsibility and their lady that they're living with is out, they've got to go to a book. But it was that instinct that told us we had to take responsibility, and we had to bring up the children to take responsibilities, not as you see they could go out and do anything. And of course they were very highly bred. They were never allowed to tell people who they were. You see, if their father was well, some of them, you see, were little lords themselves. And they were never addressed by that. And there was none of the, when you went with us, there was none of them Mr. George. It was George plain. And their letters was never allowed to have master on it. They were most particular about men having Esquire put at the end of the name, because unless their father was an Esquire, they wasn't allowed it. They're not entitled to it. They were not allowed it. They were brought up. We brought them up to, they themselves could take responsibility, truthful and respectful. Always treat their elders, no matter what station they were, to be respectful. I wasn't much older than some of them, because the boys, eventually, they went to school. The girls never went to school. They always had governesses. But the boys went to school. Well, when they come home, you see Eton, Harrow and all those sort of schools, we had to take charge of them. They was up in the nursery, just the same. And they had to go to bed early, just the same as other children.